So finally, we leave there, and after we leave my Nan and Pap's house, the next thing we know, a cop shows up, and the cop says to my dad, I was called by a family member of Jennifer's, and I want to know why she's not in school. And my dad told the cop, look, she, we're headed to the hospital now. She had an injury last night. I'm taking her to the hospital, and then she's going to school. So the cop left, and he took me to the hospital. Thankfully, I didn't need any stitches or anything like that. They didn't put me in the psych ward or anything like that, thankfully. So I left there, and then after leaving there, I went to school that day, and everything was fine from that point. I would try to hide the cut marks in school because I didn't want people to think I was weird and all this stuff. And if I wasn't using drugs, then I was cutting, because those were my ways of coping back then at the time. So finally, life went on. I'm trying to get to the next part. I have so much to tell. It's unreal. So I continued to use from 12 clear on up till 25 years of age. And it just got worse and worse and worse as the years went on. And I would, after I graduated high school, I would call my mom and be like, hey, do you have some Vikes? I need some. I'm fiending for them. I need them now. And, she had a script for him, which I personally don't think she truly needed the script, but whatever, she was a drug addict as well. So I would call her, and she would give them to me, and not just one or two, she'd give me half of her bottle, and she'd get like 120 of them. And I would take half the bottle, and I'd have that gone in no time, and I'd hit her back up again, and I just would keep getting more and more pills from her, and we'd use together, we'd get high together, that was the only time, the only really bond my mom and I had together was getting high. And, it's sad thinking back on it that's the only time I felt like I had a bond with my mom, was when I was using drugs with her. It's really sad, I can remember times where, my drug of choice was pain pills, but I always thought that she was using more than just pain pills. Well, she was. I know she was. She just never admitted to me. They say one addict knows another addict. Regardless if you're in recovery or not, you normally can spot another addict. And I could just tell by some of the certain signs and symptoms she was showing that she seemed like, she was using potentially, coke or crack, along with some downers like pain pills and things like that. And there was many a times, even when I was still in school, that I would catch her unconscious and barely breathing, if at all breathing. And it was just not fun growing up like that. And I don't know what else to say about it. It just wasn't a fun thing. But eventually it got to a point where her and I were just using so much together. And what took the icing on the cake was when I got pregnant. I got pregnant at the age of 19, I believe it was. I can't really remember right now because I have a lot I'm thinking about at the moment. And When I got pregnant, I was scared. I knew I had to get my life together. I knew I was about to have a baby, and I had to get my act together. So I was nervous, you know. I remember calling my mom and telling her, hey, I'm pregnant. She didn't believe me. I had to bring the pregnancy test over to show her, hey, I'm pregnant. This is not a joke. And I was pregnant to my husband, Brandon, because him and I have been together since I was 16. And anyway, I knew I had to get my act together. So I did. I said, you know what? I'm just going to stop using. It doesn't matter what it takes. I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop taking these pain pills. And I did. And I ended up gaining weight. And I looked healthy. You know, I wasn't using drugs during my entire pregnancy with my son. Things were starting to finally look up. Well, when my son, he was supposed to be born on October 3rd, but he didn't come. He wasn't ready. And then they were saying, okay, well, he should be here by October 5th of 2012. And he still didn't come. So they decided that, okay, we're going to try and do a induction on you. So I ended up failing the induction after 21 and a half hours labor, I think it was. I can't remember the exact amount. It was a lot of hours labor. It was like 21 and a half hours labor. And I failed that induction. I wasn't dilating, and et cetera, et cetera. So basically they said, you need to go in for an emergency C-section. Went in for an emergency C-section. Baby comes out. Baby's perfectly healthy, as they had said. No complications, they said. He was healthy, is what they said. Mind you, at this time, when my mom did find out I was pregnant in the beginning, she was still at home. But I would say 3-4 months into my pregnancy, she ended up getting in trouble with the law and going to prison. And I was heartbroken by this because I needed my mom at that time, you know. I needed her to be there for me. This was my first child that I was going to have, and I needed that, you know. I needed that motherly support. Even if she wasn't the greatest mom in the world, I needed her, man. And she promised me she would be there, and she let me down, and she wasn't there. So that hurt, you know. That killed me. But back to my son, okay? He was born healthy, they said, completely good to go. Like I said, I had stayed off drugs that entire time. I went 10 months and 1 week with my son. I was past the due date. And I went all that time without touching a drug, not one single time. And when he finally came, life seemed so great. You know, it was wonderful. Things were looking up. You know, I had Brandon. I had this beautiful baby boy, Junior. Everything was great, man. I just loved life at this point. And then one day came. Very, very, very sad day came. On November 27th of 2012, 3 days after Thanksgiving that year, one morning, my husband's alarm clock went off. And he didn't wake up to turn it off. My husband didn't. So I got up and I went out to my husband and I said, babe, I seen that my son was, you know, sleeping with him on the couch. He looked perfectly fine. He was sleeping on his back and he was good, you know. And I said, babe, wake up. Your alarm's going off, and make sure when you get up to get ready for work, feed Junior and change his diapers so I can get some sleep because I was still recovering from a C-section. He said, of course, I will, babe, no problem. So I went back to bed. And I'd say 5 minutes later, he screamed my name, and it's a scream I'll never forget. He said, Jen, get back here. Something's wrong. And boy, I'll tell you, I don't know if it was my mother instincts or if it was my mother instincts mixed with my guardian angel talking to me or what. But I heard another voice in my head, and it said, Jen, the same thing that happened to your sister is happening to your son right now. And this was prior to Brandon even saying what happened at this point. I was still laying in bed. I just remember hearing, Jen, Brandon screamed for me. And I sat straight up in that bed. And this voice just told me, Jen, the same thing that happened to your sister is happening to your son now. For those of you that don't know, I lost a sister to SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Before I even got to meet her, she would have been like a year older than me. So I was like, Brandon, oh my gosh, is the baby okay? Because I heard this voice in my head yet again. Like I did at every single point in my life when something bad was about to happen. I would always hear a voice come across in my head and warn me. It was God or his angels or just somebody I love that passed away just trying to tell me. And I remember just running out there, and my husband was performing CPR on my son. And he said, Jen, he's not breathing. I said, what do you mean he's not breathing? I was in total shock and disbelief, and I felt helpless, and I felt like, man, what do I do? I'm a mother. Why is he's only 1 month and 11 days old. What could possibly be wrong with him? They told me at the hospital he was fine. Why is this happening, God? I was mad. I was hurt. I felt helpless. So I ran immediately for the house phone, and I called the paramedics, and I said, please get here now. My son is not breathing. Please, somebody, get here now, immediately. You have to get my son to breathe. Now. So by the time they got there, which felt like eternity, by the way, I had thought I had ran down to the door to unlock it. And, apparently I didn't. My nerves were that bad that I only unlocked the bottom lock, but not the deadbolt lock. And it's the middle of winter at this point, and I'm running around barefoot. Outside we had a deck on the second story. I was out there in my bare feet yelling to the paramedics, hurry up and get inside and help save my son now. And they're like, we're trying to, ma'am. Your door's locked. I said, I unlocked it. They said, you didn't. I ran back down the stairs, and I unlocked the door. I could have swore I unlocked both locks, but I didn't. And they come running up the steps, and they literally had to push my husband, Brandon, off of our son. And when they did that, my husband didn't want to stop. He didn't want to stop doing the CPR. He wanted to bring him back so bad. And me, I was in shock. I just was, to this day, I can't even explain the feeling I felt. It's a feeling you won't know unless you experience it. So the next thing I knew, the paramedics take him out of the house. And I remember watching from the top of the steps them carry my baby boy out of that house. And just his head being so lifeless, and it was the worst experience I've ever encountered in my life. Ever. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Ever. And I'm thinking to myself, man, he's gonna be okay. I have faith. He's gonna be okay. They're gonna bring him back. They're just taking him out to the ambulance to revive him. He's gonna be fine. We're gonna get through this. He's gonna be fine. This can't be happening. This isn't real. And I could have swore that they would bring him back in, and they came back in and they said, I'm sorry to tell you, but he didn't make it. He didn't make it. And I remember crying so hard, and it was a cry I cannot even explain to you. It was the worst thing anyone could ever go through. And after that moment, I had the efforts, and I said, you know what? I don't care if I live or die anymore. And that's when I went into my use very bad. At this point, my mom was still in prison. My son's gone. It was, 3 days after Thanksgiving. I remember tearing the Christmas stuff down in the house and screaming, why me? Why my son? And that's when I decided I'm going to pick back up. And this time I'm going to pick back up the drugs with a vengeance, because I'm pissed and I'm mad and I'm angry. And at that time I'm thinking, why would God do this to me? And so I did. My mom was in jail, but I knew that my stepdad was prescribed pain pills. So I would go over there and I would take them without him knowing or anybody knowing.
Hey, buddy.
He had a feeling. He knew I was using, and he wanted me to stop. He wanted me to stop so bad, and I just would not listen to him at all. At all. And looking back on it, I really wish I would have listened to him, man. I really, really do. But I was just so stubborn and hard-headed, I didn't care to listen. So I just continued going and getting more and more and more, and getting high and getting high and high and high and high all the time. Just so high that I didn't have to feel the pain of losing my son. I didn't have to feel nothing. That's why I did it. And I didn't care if I lived or died. I really didn't. So that went on for a few years again, and I'm still using just the pain pills at this point. And finally, a few years passed by, and I'm still obviously using and grieving, but not really grieving because I'm self-medicating with drugs. Excuse me. And I decided that, you know what? I think I want to get pregnant again. So I got pregnant again.
You pregnant?
With this little beautiful girl of mine, Jaylee. Say hi.
Hi.
So I decided I was going to get pregnant. And I did. And I stayed clean for majority of my pregnancy.
You're pussy?
I slowed down on my usage, but I'm not going to lie, I didn't stop 100%. And finally, when my daughter did come, it was one of the most scariest but most exciting thing to ever experience. I was scared that it was going to happen to me again, that I was going to lose another child again, which I didn't want to lose another child again. I was terrified of losing another child again. And I remember pleading with them to put her on a heart machine because I had lost a son to SIDS. And they did not want to listen to me. And I said, look, I am a mother, and I'm telling you now, if you don't put her on this heart machine, I just have a feeling it's going to happen again. They didn't care to listen to me. So I had to fight with them. And I finally got my way. And I got her put on a heart machine. And thank God I did, because the very first night she came home, she stopped breathing 18 times in her sleep. 18 times. That could have been another kid. But after I had her, she was born completely healthy. She was a big baby. She was healthy, good to go. And I ended up getting fixed, and I decided I didn't want no more children because I have heart problems. I have SVT. I've had 2 heart surgeries already, and I'm only 26 years old. The doctors say it's SVT, but I say it's heartbreak from losing my son. And I don't care what anybody says, because that's when my heart problems started. After I lost my son, I had a heart attack. And at that time, I was only about 20 or 21, I can't remember, 20 or 21, something like that. And I had a heart attack. I legitimately had a heart attack. And I've had many of heart attacks since then. And it's crazy because I'm only now, at the present time, I'm only 26 years old. I shouldn't be having these problems in my life. But, that's what happens when you you lose a child and you do drugs and you put your body through so much stuff, your health just deteriorates. I remember having, stomach ulcers all the time and bleeding in my lining of my stomach, and just it was horrible. Okay? So after I had my daughter, I still didn't learn my lesson. I'm not gonna lie. I still didn't learn my lesson. My mom ended up going back to prison again after I had my daughter. A few months, I believe it was, after I had my daughter. And I was yet again mad at her. Why are you doing this to me? You promised me yet again that you would not do this to me. And this is my second kid now. The first kid you promised, second kid you promised, and here you are letting me down again. Well, once she got out and all that stuff, I still was using the pain pills. Life just seemed horrible still. And I began to use... She offered me one day, I remember, she was out of her script and she said, how about you take a fentanyl patch? I said, alright, well, what does that do? She said, oh, it has the same effect as the pain pills, but it's like 10 times stronger. Come up to the house and I'll put it on you. So I did. And I went up there and I had her put the fentanyl patch on my back, and I ended up falling in love with a new drug. And I got hooked on that for, I'd say, maybe 6 months. I was taking fentanyl patches with the pain pills. So it became to a point where... And I also had postpartum when I had Jaylee, so I didn't want to face that postpartum as well. Plus, I was scared of losing her, so I was just getting high out of my mind. And finally, I decided, after some time, it's time to get my act together, man. My mom would play so many head games with me because she wanted to see my daughter so much that she would be like, here, if you come up to my house, I'll give you all these drugs if you let me see Jaylee. And of course, being an addict at the time, I wanted the drugs over my own daughter at that time. And that shit kills me inside. But that's what drugs do to people, It's hell in itself. It literally is like living in hell. And there was times where it was that bad that I was pretty much comatose on my couch, and Brandon was so scared for me. He was constantly checking on me to make sure I was breathing, and he just wanted me to stop, and I would not listen to him, man. I felt like he just didn't understand. I didn't care to know what he had to say. I just cared about chasing the demon. And one day came where I wanted to get high again. And I had texted my mom, and she was playing her little head games because she's a diagnosed sociopath. And I didn't want Jaylee to go up there the one day. Fine. And she says, well, I'm out of the pain pills and the patches. Sorry, can't help you. Well, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna stop. I'm tired of playing her games. I'm tired of living this life, regardless on how it started with me being 12 and needing pain pills for my menstrual. Either way, it spiraled out of control from all... I had been through so much trauma and things in my life, and I said, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm not going to let anyone dangle anything over my head anymore, and I'm going to take the power back, because I know I have it in me to fight this, and I know I can beat this. It's going to be hard, but I know I can do it. And I remember telling Brandon that, and I did. I didn't go to any NA meetings. I didn't go to AA meetings. I tried to have a sponsor for a while, and that didn't turn out very well because of the fact that my sponsor was a friend of mine. She was 5 years clean off of methamphetamines and some other drugs, and when I decided to get clean, I stopped talking to my mom. And my mom ended up talking to this girl who was my sponsor. She was a friend of mine. And this girl ended up turning on me, and she was supposed to be my friend. My mom was paying her to get information about me. And I just was like, that's not a real friend to go and do that. Look, I need a sponsor because I need help. I don't need a sponsor to be nosy and go back and tell my mom how much better I'm doing just so she can keep wrecking my life. So I dropped that sponsor and I said, you know what? I'm just going to talk to God and I'm going to ask him for his help. And you know what? I did. And when I did, it was the best thing I could have ever done. Because God got me through every single withdrawal. And he's gotten me up to this very moment that I'm speaking to you right now. I've got over 14 months clean. I am today, as of today, 14 months and 26 days clean and serene from fentanyl patches and pain pills. Okay? And all other drugs as well, except for these. Cigarettes. I know that's on my next to-do list, okay? I know I got to do it eventually, but just right now I'm not ready. But I am clean as far as any other drugs go and alcohol. I haven't touched nothing. Now, I am dual diagnosis. I have panic and anxiety attacks. I have PTSD. I have ADHD, mild OCD, and I have insomnia. So I am prescribed medication for that. But I take it as prescribed. I do not abuse my medication. And I take it properly. And it helps balance me out. Because I have chemical imbalances wrong in my brain. And I can't help that. That is why I take my medication. And if I don't take my medication, I can't be the best person I can be. And when I'm on my medication for my mental illnesses, it honestly helps me stay in the right mindset and to just do what I gotta do. It just takes the edge off of things and it keeps me right where I need to be. And it also helps me in my recovery. Because before I was self-medicating by taking pain pills and things that were just completely horrible for me. And now I'm actually taking the correct medication I need to be taking for my mental illnesses. So basically my message to you is I can do it. You can do it. There is no question about it. None. There's absolutely no questions. We together can end this epidemic that's in this world. We can. All we have to do is come together as recovering addicts and fight, or even the still suffering addict. Reach out and ask for help. I don't care who you ask. It could be me. It could be anybody. It could be your parents. It could be a true, genuine friend that doesn't use drugs with you. It could be anybody you truly trust. Reach out. We're here. I'm here. It's possible. My way was through God. My entirety of my sobriety has all been faith-based. And when people look at me and they say, how did you stay clean so long? And I say, God, they look at me like I'm going crazy. Like, yeah, right, God. But truly, God. That is all I can say. Man, when I was going through those withdrawals, I was sweating like crazy, burning up. My feet were swampy. Everything was horrible. I had the restless leg syndrome, all that. And let me tell you, I had that not just for a month or a couple days. I had that for clear 6 months straight. And guess what? I did it. And I only did it because of God, because I prayed and I prayed and I told myself, tomorrow will get better. This will get better. And then say the next day came and it still was bad. Doesn't matter. Tomorrow will be a better day. And I just kept that motto and I stuck with it. And I did it. And I don't plan to look back. So if you are struggling, I hope I could be of some sort of inspiration to you and of some help. And if you need any help, reach out, because we're here and we do recover. And there's other options than using drugs. I love you all and thank you for listening to my testimony. Peace and love, Jen.